Hello and welcome back to my channel. It is almost Halloween, so it is time for a Halloween sewing project. Now a friend of mine and I are joining a Halloween themed ballroom competition, and we of course need some matching outfits. So it is time to make those. Now the plan is that I'm gonna make two fairly simple items of clothing for each of us to wear, so we'll match. And for that we have bought this insane Halloween fabric. It is not very classy or anything, but it is definitely Halloween themed, and that is all we're going for. So we'll use this. The quality of it isn't great either, but the pattern is kind of very, very Halloween. It has the pumpkins and the witches and the ghosts and everything. So that's pretty great. Now for her, I'm gonna make a simple skirt, a circle skirt so that it whooshes nicely when she turns, and I'm gonna be the leader, so I'm making myself a shirt. Now I have this shirt. This is one of my favorite shirts. You can't really see it very well, but it's like a button-up t-shirt blouse, and I think it's the perfect design for what I want with this shirt. But this has blue flowers, it's not Halloween at all, so we'll use the same fabric for it. Okay, so I've never actually made a button-up blouse before. The general idea is that this one has short sleeves, so that should be fairly easy. This shirt is a bit see-through, but the other one won't be. And it has a collar. Now the collar is the part that I'm sort of most worried about, because I've never actually done a collar before. But if I look at this shirt and I will try to take the pattern pieces straight from this shirt, then I think we just need like these two collar pieces that are attached to the top part, and I think we should manage. Now I'm also gonna have to make a lot of buttonholes, and as I said in the last video, I don't like buttonholes, so I'll try my best. I've gotten some tips on how to do them because I suck at them, so we'll try. However, if I end up not having enough time, it's the first thing that's gonna go, because the shirt doesn't actually need closing. I'll wear something underneath it. So it's really just to complete it, and so that I'll be able to wear it in multiple ways, but it's not necessary, and I could always add them after the competition as well. Now, let's first get started cutting everything out. Alright, I figured I'd start with the shirt first. So for that, if I just look at this one, it exists out of two front panels, one back panel, the sleeves, and two collar pieces. So it should definitely be doable. I am planning on just simply laying this shirt onto the fabric and tracing it with my crayon pen and then cutting it out. I do need to remember to add seam allowance after I draw it on, because clearly this one doesn't have seam allowance. So I need to remember to save some distance behind it to cut around. Now because the back piece is symmetrical, I'm gonna just put it on the fold and cut it like that, because I think it would be easier to get it more symmetrical that way. So first I traced half of the back panel onto the fabric and cut that out. After that I did the same for the front panel, cutting out both pieces at once by having two layers of fabric on top of each other. I do that quite a lot because I find it just a little bit easier to get two pieces that are exactly the same. Especially with fabric like this, that's not stretchy and fairly easy to cut. For the sleeve, I thought it was a little bit harder to just trace it onto the fabric, so instead I decided to measure a couple points on the sleeve so I could draw out my own little pattern piece on the fabric itself. For this, I measured the distance from the end of the sleeve to the shoulder and the end of the sleeve to the armpit, and also the circumference of the sleeve. Lastly, I measured the circumference of the armhole as well. From these measurements, I drew out roughly the right shape directly on the fabric, and I actually just used pencil for this because actually this fabric is basically plastic. It kind of feels a little plasticky as well. But the nice result is that on the back side, which is white, I can just draw with pencil. Now if you're paying close attention to how I'm drawing this, you'll notice that actually I have the pattern of the fabric the wrong way around on this. So that wasn't ideal. I did end up cutting the sleeves out again just from the right type of fabric, but I didn't film that. Now I don't really understand how to make a collar, but looking at this shirt, it exists out of two separate pieces that will each be copied twice. So for that I copied them straight onto the fabric as well, once again using just pencil. Once again I didn't draw the seam allowance on, so I had to cut around a little extra. After cutting out all the pieces for the shirt, the first thing I did was attach the back panel to the two front panels. Now we're using French seams again, because this fabric frays very easily. My house is full of Halloween themed little threads now, but I guess that's a type of decoration. After I did that, I tried it on for a second to see if it was a decent fit. This is when I noticed that around the chest area there was a bit of fabric that awkwardly sticked out a bit, and when I looked closer at the original shirt I noticed it had two darts towards the boob area. So I decided to also put darts in this shirt as well to keep those bits of fabric from sticking out. Okay, the darts make it a lot better, so it's time to put on the sleeves. For that I first sewed them closed, so that they would be like a tube shape. And then I attached them to the armholes in the shirt. Now when I was pinning this, it turns out I had a lot of extra fabric left in the seam on the sleeve side, so I actually decided to trim them both a bit, so they would fit a little bit better. I'm really glad I did that, because when I tried it on after pinning it the first time, the sleeves just stuck out kind of weirdly, and now it's a lot better, although one side still does it a little bit. Next I wanted to get started on the collar, but I realized that for the collar to be put on correctly, at least the midline seam of the shirt needs to be hemmed. So I did that first, and while I was at it I also hemmed the bottom of the shirt and the edges of the sleeves. Once I actually got started on the collar, I started off by taking the very top pieces, pinning those together and sewing them. I also ironed this bit to make the edges a bit more sharp. After that it was time to attach these thin curved strips of fabric to the bottom of the collar. For that I sandwiched the top of the collar in between the strips and sewed those together. Now I made a small mistake sewing this on, which resulted in these little flaps sticking out quite a bit in the end, but it's a good lesson for next time. It doesn't bother me too much. After I finished sewing the pieces together, I folded over the lower part and ironed it again, just so it would sit in place better. I then folded the edges of it inwards and ironed it over it again to make it easier to pin onto the rest of the shirt. Then the final step was pinning it to the rest of the shirt and sewing it on. Time to start with cutting things out for the skirt. This is Nika, I'm dancing the competition with her, and she's helping me out a little bit with the sewing. She does actually sew herself as well, so she knows what needs to be done, but she just didn't have the time for this project, which is why I'm doing most of it. First we cut out the circle for the circle skirt. Now I know you can do this in one piece, however the pattern on this fabric is directional, so to avoid any witches flying upside down, we decided to cut it out in two halves instead. Now of course it's better to cut it out in even more pieces, but we weren't feeling that picky either. So we cut out two half circles first, each with a little hole cut from the center of it. We also cut out a strip for the waistband. And then it's zipper time. To actually make sure Nika is able to get into the skirt, we're putting in a small zipper. So I'm doing that first, before I even attach the two halves together, because that's just a little bit easier. The next step is sewing the two parts together on each side. And I wanted to use French seams for both of these seams. However, I ended up doing it just on one side, which is kind of a little odd decision, but I didn't feel like fiddling around with the zipper too much, and on the other side it was easy enough, and I guess it was better than neither. After the two sides were attached to each other, I decided to hem the whole thing first before putting the waistband on, for no particular reason. It's been a while since I've made a full circle skirt, so I kind of forgot how much work it was to actually hem a skirt like this. It's always way longer than you expect it to be. But at least it didn't give me much trouble, so it was done fairly quick, considering. Then it was time for the waistband. Now, because this fabric is a little bit stiff, I decided to iron it into place first. I folded it in half and ironed it like that first to get a sharp edge, and then I folded both edges inward to create clean finished lines. I ironed those as well, so it would stay like a sort of bias tape, just a little bit thicker than you would normally have it. After I sewed on the waistband, two sides of it were still sticking out, because we made it a little bit longer than the actual waistband of the skirt. We did this so Nika could put a little tie in the side of it, just to give it a little extra touch. To clean up those edges, I cut off the ends of it that were showing the selvage of the fabric, and finally sewed them shut. And with that, our outfits are all finished, so let's get to the competition. Alright, so it's the day after the competition and it was an amazing day. I had a lot of fun dancing. It was great. The outfits were perfect for the dancing, so that was awesome too. And in fact, Nika and I actually won our own category in Latin, so that is just a bonus, because of course it is mainly about just having fun. Now, for the sewing itself of this project, there were a few things that could have gone better, but all in all, I'm very happy with how the items turned out. And as I said, they were just perfect for what I needed them to do. So I hope you enjoyed watching, and I hope to see you next time when I start on the next project. But for now, have a nice day. Bye!